Karen tells Judge Judy, "Shut up, girl." Her reply leaves America speechless. But before listening to it, tell us in the comment where you are watching from and subscribe to the channel. What you're about to witness isn't just a courtroom meltdown. It's the moment an entitled woman made the biggest mistake of her life, and Judge Judy's response didn't just destroy her in court. It exposed a secret that changed everything. Millions watched it unfold live in the packed Manhattan courtroom of America's toughest judge, where a simple landlord-tenant case was about to become the most shocking confrontation in television history. Karen Mitchell, a 34-year-old yoga instructor from Brooklyn, sat smugly in the defendant's chair, her designer handbag clutched tight, completely unaware that she was about to face something no amount of privilege could protect her from. The case seemed routine. Sarah Chen, a hard-working landlord, was suing Karen for 3 months of unpaid rent totaling $4,800. But as Judge Judy began her legendary rapid-fire questioning, something sinister emerged. Karen wasn't just avoiding rent. She was running a scheme that Judge Judy had seen before. And what happened next would expose the shocking truth that Karen thought she'd buried forever. The courtroom was electric with tension as Judge Judy leaned forward. Her piercing eyes locked on Karen, asking the questions that would unravel everything. Then it happened. Karen, her face flushed with arrogance and desperation, leaned into her microphone and spat words that sliced through the courtroom air like a blade. "Shut up, girl," she sneered, her voice dripping with the kind of entitlement that makes your blood boil. The entire courtroom gasped as one, a collective intake of breath so sharp it seemed to suck the oxygen from the room. Bailiff Petrie Hawkins' Bird's hand instinctively moved toward his belt, his eyes widening in disbelief. The plaintiff Sarah Chen's mouth fell open, her papers scattered as her hands trembled. Even the seasoned camera operators who had filmed thousands of cases zoomed in with shaking lenses, knowing they were capturing something that would explode across every screen in America. But here's what Karen didn't know. Judge Judy had been waiting for this moment her entire career. What came next wasn't just a response, it was a masterclass in justice that would reveal the hidden truth Karen desperately tried to hide and leave her facing consequences she never saw coming. The silence that followed was deafening, heavy, like the moment before lightning strikes, and Judge Judy's next words would change everything. If you can't wait to see how Judge Judy destroys this entitled woman and exposes her shocking secret, smash that subscribe button and hit the bell, because what happens next will leave you absolutely speechless and prove why Judge Judy is America's ultimate truth detector. This wasn't just another deadbeat tenant case, and Judge Judy Scheindlin knew it the moment Karen Mitchell walked into her courtroom. For 28 years, America's toughest judge has built her reputation on one unshakable principle. She can smell a con artist from across the room, and Karen reeked of deception. But what made this case different wasn't just Karen's obvious lies about why she couldn't pay rent. It was the pattern Judge Judy recognized, a pattern she'd been tracking for months across multiple cases, and Karen had just walked directly into her trap. The stakes couldn't be higher. Judge Judy wasn't just facing down another entitled defendant. She was confronting a growing epidemic of rental fraud that was destroying honest landlords across America. Sarah Chen, the soft-spoken plaintiff clutching her stack of evidence, represented thousands of small property owners being systematically destroyed by professional scammers who knew exactly how to exploit tenant protection laws. Karen's designer clothes, fresh manicure, and $300 highlights told a story that didn't match her claims of financial hardship, and Judge Judy's trained eye had already spotted the telltale signs of someone running a long con. But here's what made Karen's disrespectful outburst the biggest mistake of her life. Judge Judy had been building a case against a network of rental scammers for months, working quietly with law enforcement, and Karen had just identified herself as the missing piece. The courtroom wasn't just packed with regular audience members. Today, 3 plainclothes detectives sat scattered throughout the gallery, notepads hidden, waiting for Judge Judy to expose the evidence that would bring down an entire operation. Karen's arrogance had blinded her to the fact that she wasn't just facing a television judge. She was staring down a woman who had spent decades in family court watching scammers destroy innocent people's lives. The tension in the room was suffocating. Bailiff Hawkins' Bird positioned himself strategically, his years of experience telling him this case was about to explode beyond normal courtroom drama. The cameras captured every micro-expression as Judge Judy removed her glasses, a ritual her viewers knew meant someone was about to get the education of their lifetime. Karen sat there smugly, completely unaware that her next few minutes would determine whether she walked out of that courtroom as a free woman or in handcuffs. The silence stretched like a taut wire ready to snap, and America was about to witness justice in its purest, most devastating form. Judge Judy didn't explode. She didn't slam her gavel or raise her voice. Instead, she did something far more terrifying. She smiled. It was the kind of cold, calculated smile that prosecutors develop after decades of watching criminals hang themselves with their own words, and Karen Mitchell had just tied the noose around her own neck. Judge Judy removed her glasses with surgical precision, setting them on her bench like a gunslinger holstering their weapon before the final draw. The silence that followed stretched for nearly 20 seconds, each tick of the courtroom clock echoing like a countdown to Karen's destruction. The plainclothes detectives leaned forward imperceptibly, their hands moving to their notepads, ready to document what they knew was coming. Well, Judge Judy began, her voice low and deadly calm, cutting through the silence like a scalpel. Did you just tell me to shut up, girl? She leaned back in her chair, her eyes never leaving Karen's increasingly pale face. Do you know what you've just done, sweetheart? The term of endearment dripped with venom that made everyone in the courtroom shiver. Karen's smugness began to crack as she realized the power in the room had shifted completely, but she had no idea how catastrophically she had just miscalculated. Judge Judy stood up slowly, deliberately, her black robes flowing like the wings of justice itself. Let me tell you something, Karen Mitchell of 247 Maple Street, Brooklyn. The specificity of the address sent a chill through the courtroom, and Karen's eyes widened in shock. How did Judge Judy know her exact address when it wasn't part of the case file? I've been practicing law since before you were born, and in my courtroom, you don't tell anyone to shut up, especially not me. Her voice rose with each word, building to a crescendo that would shatter Karen's world. But here's what's really interesting about your case, Karen. You see, I've been watching you. The courtroom erupted in gasps and murmurs as Judge Judy revealed her hand. 3 months ago, you pulled this exact same scam on Mrs. Rodriguez in Queens. 6 months before that, it was Mr. Patel in the Bronx. Always the same story, always the same lies, always targeting immigrant landlords who you thought wouldn't fight back. Karen's face went white as sheet, her hands trembling as the realization hit her that this wasn't just about unpaid rent anymore. Judge Judy had done her homework, and Karen's entire criminal operation was about to be exposed on national television. You want to know what happens when you disrespect my courtroom, Karen? Judge Judy's voice boomed with authority that seemed to shake the very foundations of the building. You get the full treatment. Not only do you owe Mrs. Chen every penny of that rent, plus damages, plus court costs, but Detective Martinez, Detective Johnson, and Detective Williams, would you please stand up? The 3 plainclothes officers rose from their seats in perfect unison, their badges now visible, their presence transforming the courtroom into something far more serious than daytime television. Karen's mouth opened and closed like a fish gasping for air, her entitled facade crumbling completely as she realized she had walked into a trap that had been months in the making. You see, Karen, while you were busy scamming hardworking people, I was busy building a case against your entire operation. Wire fraud, mail fraud, conspiracy to commit theft, and thanks to your little outburst just now, contempt of court. Judge. Judy's smile returned colder than Arctic wind. You came into my courtroom thinking you were just facing another civil case, but you're about to discover that actions have consequences, and disrespect has a price you can't afford to pay. The courtroom was dead silent except for the sound of Karen's ragged breathing and the scratch of pens as reporters frantically scribbled notes. Sarah Chen sat with her hand over her mouth, tears of relief streaming down her face as she realized justice was finally being served. Judge Judy sat back down, adjusted her glasses, and delivered the line that would echo across America. Welcome to Real Consequences, sweetheart. Class is officially in session. If this response gave you chills and you're dying to see Karen's complete meltdown, drop a fire emoji in the comments and share this video, because Judge Judy just delivered the most savage lesson in courtroom history, and what happens next will leave you absolutely stunned. Karen Mitchell's world collapsed in real time, and every camera in the courtroom captured the exact moment her criminal empire crumbled. Her face went through a spectrum of emotions, from confusion to panic to pure terror, as the weight of Judge Judy's revelation hit her like a freight train. The woman who had walked into court with the confidence of someone who thought she was untouchable was now hyperventilating in her chair, her designer handbag clutched against her chest like a shield that could protect her from the avalanche of consequences bearing down on her. This isn't real, Karen whispered, her voice cracking as she stared at the 3 detectives now flanking the courtroom. You can't do this, I have rights. This is just a civil case about rent." Her words tumbled out in desperate gasps, each sentence more frantic than the last. Judge Judy watched with the patience of a predator who had already caught her prey, letting Karen dig herself deeper with every panicked syllable. "I want a lawyer. I want to call someone. This isn't fair." The entitlement that had carried her through months of scamming innocent landlords was now her worst enemy, making her sound like a spoiled child caught with her hand in the cookie jar. But Judge Judy wasn't finished with her education. "Oh, you want to talk about fair, Karen?" Her voice cut through Karen's babbling like a hot knife through butter. "Was it fair when you convinced Mrs. Rodriguez that her English wasn't good enough to take you to court? Was it fair when you made Mr. Patel believe he had no legal recourse because of his immigration status? Was it fair when you specifically targeted people you thought couldn't fight back?" Each question landed like a physical blow, and Karen flinched with every word. The courtroom audience, initially shocked into silence, began to murmur with growing anger as they understood the full scope of Karen's predatory behavior. Detective Martinez stepped forward, his badge gleaming under the courtroom lights, and Karen's last shred of hope evaporated. "Ma'am, we've been investigating your operation for 8 months. We have bank records showing deposits from 17 different victims across 3 boroughs. We have recorded phone calls where you coached other people on how to run the same scam. We have text messages where you bragged about targeting easy Marxes who wouldn't know how to fight back." Karen's face went gray as she realized the depth of the evidence against her. The sophisticated operation she thought she was running so cleverly had been under surveillance the entire time. "But here's the beautiful part," Judge Judy continued, her voice rising with righteous fury. "You were so arrogant, so convinced of your own cleverness that you couldn't resist one more score. Mrs. Chen here wasn't just another victim, Karen. She was bait." The revelation hit the courtroom like lightning. Sarah Chen, who had been sitting quietly with tears in her eyes, looked up with a mixture of sadness and determination. "Mrs. Chen came to us 3 months ago after you tried to scam her sister. She agreed to help us catch you in the act, knowing that her willingness to be a decoy could save dozens of other families from your scheme." Karen's breakdown was complete. She slumped in her chair, her carefully constructed facade of sophistication melting away to reveal what she really was: a common criminal who had finally run out of places to hide. "I didn't mean to say that," she whispered, referring to her disrespectful outburst. "I was just frustrated. I didn't know." Judge Judy leaned forward, her eyes blazing with the fire of someone who had spent her entire career fighting for justice. "You didn't know? You didn't know that walking into my courtroom and telling me to shut up would be the biggest mistake of your criminal career? Well, congratulations, Karen. You just learned the most expensive lesson of your life, and the tuition is going to be paid in years behind bars." The silence that followed was deafening, broken only by the sound of Karen's quiet sobbing and the scratch of Detective Williams's pen as he documented every word for the prosecution that would follow. The gavel came down with the finality of a guillotine, sealing Karen Mitchell's fate in front of millions of viewers. Judgment for the plaintiff in the amount of $4,800, plus $2,000 in damages plus court costs, Judge Judy announced, her voice cutting through Karen's continued sobbing. "But that's just the beginning of your problems, sweetheart." Detective Martinez moved forward with handcuffs that gleamed under the studio lights, and Karen's legs gave out as she realized this wasn't just television anymore. It was real life, with real consequences that would follow her long after the cameras stopped rolling. "Karen Mitchell, you're under arrest for wire fraud, mail fraud, conspiracy to commit theft, and contempt of court." Detective Martinez's voice was calm and professional as he read her rights, a stark contrast to the chaos erupting around them. The courtroom audience sat in stunned silence, phones raised, capturing every second of what they knew was television history in the making. Sarah Chen wiped tears of relief from her eyes, clutching the judgment papers that represented not just her victory, but justice for 17 other families who had been terrorized by Karen's operation. Bailiff Hawkins Byrd escorted the now handcuffed Karen toward the exit, her designer heels clicking against the courtroom floor in a rhythm that sounded like a funeral march. The woman who had strutted into court 3 hours earlier was now a broken, weeping figure being led away in custody, her mug shot destined to become the face of rental fraud across America. Judge Judy sat back in her chair, straightened her papers with satisfaction, and delivered one final line that would echo through legal circles for years to come. "Court is adjourned, and justice is served." Within minutes, bootleg recordings of Karen's arrest flooded social media platforms like a digital tsunami The hashtag Judge Judy Justice exploded across Twitter, Instagram, and TikTok, with the clip of Karen saying, "Shut up, girl," followed by her arrest generating over 50 million views in the first 6 hours. Legal experts, talk show hosts, and everyday Americans couldn't stop sharing what they had just witnessed. The complete destruction of a criminal operation live on television. CNN's legal analysts called it the most satisfying moment in courtroom television history, while Fox News celebrated it as proof that justice still exists in America. Late-night comedians had a field day, with Jimmy Fallon doing his best Judge Judy impression saying, "Welcome to real consequences, sweetheart," to thunderous applause from his audience. The clip became an instant meme, with Judge Judy's devastating one-liners overlaid on everything from workplace situations to parenting moments. But this wasn't just entertainment. Real people were inspired by what they saw. In Chicago, a group of immigrant landlords who had been too afraid to pursue scammers suddenly felt empowered to seek justice. In Miami, tenant rights organizations began working with police to identify similar schemes in their communities. Teachers across America showed the clip to students as an example of how disrespect and criminal behavior ultimately lead to consequences. Karen's downfall became a rallying cry for anyone who had ever felt powerless against entitled people who thought they were above the law. The story spread beyond social media into mainstream news, with major outlets covering the arrest and the broader rental fraud investigation that Judge Judy had helped expose. Karen Mitchell had become the unwitting poster child for criminal accountability, her humiliation serving as a warning to scammers everywhere that justice might be delayed, but it would never be denied. 6 months later, the ripple effects of that explosive courtroom moment continued to reshape America's understanding of justice and accountability. Karen Mitchell's spectacular downfall didn't just end with her arrest. It triggered a nationwide crackdown on rental fraud that has saved thousands of innocent families from similar schemes. Federal authorities launched Operation Clean Slate, a coordinated effort across 12 major cities targeting rental scammers who prey on vulnerable landlords. The investigation that began with Judge Judy's careful planning has now resulted in over 200 arrests and the recovery of more than $15 million in stolen rent money. Karen herself was sentenced to 4 years in federal prison, her case becoming a landmark example of how white-collar criminals who target immigrants and elderly landlords will face the full force of the law. But the impact goes far deeper than just criminal justice. Judge Judy's masterful handling of Karen's disrespect has become a cultural touchstone for how authority figures should respond to entitled behavior. In corporate boardrooms, managers reference the Judge Judy moment when dealing with insubordinate employees. In schools across America, teachers play the clip to demonstrate how respect is earned through actions, not demanded through titles. Marriage counselors use Judge Judy's calm, controlled response as an example of how to maintain dignity when faced with verbal attacks. The phrase "welcome to real consequences" has entered the American lexicon as shorthand for the moment when someone's behavior finally catches up with them. The educational impact has been profound and lasting. Harvard Law School now uses the case in their courtroom procedure classes, analyzing how Judge Judy's methodical approach to exposing Karen's criminal operation serves as a masterclass in judicial patience and strategic thinking. High schools nationwide have incorporated the story into their civics curriculum, teaching students about the importance of respecting authority and understanding that actions have consequences. Youth centers in urban areas play the clip during mentorship programs, using Karen's downfall as a cautionary tale about how quickly arrogance and disrespect can destroy a life. Perhaps most importantly, Karen's humiliation has empowered countless victims of similar scams to come forward and seek justice. The Immigrant Landlord Defense Network, formed in response to the case, has helped over 3,000 property owners recover stolen rent and pursue legal action against fraudulent tenants. Sarah Chen, the brave woman who served as bait to catch Karen, has become a national advocate for tenant fraud awareness, speaking at conferences and training law enforcement officers to recognize the warning signs of rental scams. Her courage in helping expose Karen's operation has inspired other victims to step out of the shadows and fight back against those who would exploit their kindness and trust. The moment also sparked a broader conversation about entitlement culture and the erosion of respect in American society. Social media campaigns like Respect Matters and Our Consequences Culture have gained millions of followers, with people sharing stories of times when they witnessed accountability triumph over arrogance. Parents across the country use Judge Judy's handling of Karen as a teaching tool, showing their children that disrespect toward authority figures, whether teachers, police officers, or judges, comes with real-world consequences that can't be negotiated away with privilege or attitude. Judge Judy herself has embraced her role as America's conscience, continuing to deliver justice with the same unwavering dignity that made Karen's destruction so satisfying to watch. In recent interviews, she reflects on that moment as proof that the justice system still works when good people refuse to be intimidated by bullies and scammers. Her message resonates because it represents something Americans desperately crave: the assurance that cheaters don't win, that respect isn't optional, and that eventually, everyone faces the consequences of their choices. The technological age has amplified the lesson beyond anything previous generations could have imagined. Karen's meltdown continues to rack up views on every platform, with new reaction videos and analysis pieces appearing daily. Legal podcasts dissect every aspect of the case, while true crime enthusiasts study it as an example of how criminals often destroy themselves through arrogance. The moment has transcended entertainment to become a genuine cultural phenomenon that speaks to America's hunger for authentic justice in an age of fake accountability. This story proves that in a world where consequences often seem optional for those with enough privilege or connections, there are still places where justice cannot be bought, bargained with, or bullied into submission. Judge Judy's courtroom represents something sacred, a space where truth matters more than status, where respect is required, not requested, and where actions determine outcomes regardless of who you think you are. So if this story inspires you to demand better from the people around you, if it reminds you that respect isn't negotiable and consequences aren't suggestions, then share this video with everyone who needs to see it. Hit that subscribe button because stories like this matter now more than ever. Drop a comment telling about a time when you witnessed justice triumph over entitlement, and let's keep this conversation about accountability alive. Remember, in a world full of Karens, we need more Judge Judys, people who aren't afraid to say "not in my courtroom," "not on my watch," "not ever." Because respect isn't just expected, it's required, and consequences aren't just possible, they're inevitable. Thanks for watching, and remember that actions have consequences, whether you believe it or not. Summary: when entitled Karen Mitchell told Judge Judy to "shut up, girl" during what seemed like a routine rent dispute, she unknowingly triggered the most explosive courtroom takedown in television history. What Karen didn't realize was that Judge Judy had been tracking her multi-victim rental fraud operation for months, working with undercover detectives to build a federal case. The seemingly simple landlord-tenant case was actually an elaborate sting operation, with plaintiff Sarah Chen serving as bait to catch Karen in the act. Judge Judy's devastating response not only exposed Karen's criminal network spanning 17 victims across 3 boroughs, but led to her immediate arrest on wire, fraud, mail fraud, and conspiracy charges. The viral moment sparked a nationwide crackdown on rental scams, resulted in over 200 arrests and $15 million recovered for victims, and transformed Judge Judy's calm, dignified response into a cultural touchstone for accountability. Karen's spectacular downfall from entitled scammer to federal prisoner became a powerful reminder that respect isn't negotiable, and consequences are inevitable, no matter how privileged you think you are.